My name is Karen Shelley, and I was 28 years old when my boyfriend asked me to temporarily erase myself from my own life so he could see if he still loved another woman. The air in our apartment didn't feel different that Tuesday evening. That's what still unsettles me when I think back on it. There was no thunder, no ominous silence, no warning signs screaming at me to run. The smell of roasted garlic chicken lingered in the kitchen, warm and familiar. The same recipe I made every other week. The same small IKEA dining table we'd assembled together 3 years earlier, swearing we'd upgrade someday. Someday was supposed to be marriage. Across from me sat Daryl DeLeon, my boyfriend of 3 years. We'd lived together for 2. He was pushing a piece of broccoli around his plate, eyes fixed on the wood grain, as if the table had suddenly become fascinating. I remember thinking he looked nervous, but not guilty. There's a difference I didn't understand yet. I thought we were solid. I had spreadsheets for our finances, a shared savings account labeled Future. I'd been quietly setting money aside for an engagement ring after he showed me one in a jeweler's window. Last winter, classic understated something he said felt like us. I pictured a boring life with him, and I meant that as the highest compliment. Then he spoke. Lena is coming to town. The sentence landed between us like a dead thing. I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. Lena, his ex-girlfriend, the one from college, the one who played in a band that never went anywhere, the one who broke his heart, disappeared, and somehow never stopped haunting our relationship. She's here for a week, he added. He finally looked up. His eyes weren't apologetic. They were bright, excited, nervous in the way people get before a first date or a big opportunity. My stomach tightened. She messaged me, he said quickly. She wants to see me. I set my fork down. The clink against the plate sounded louder than it should have. And I asked. He took a breath, the kind people take before diving underwater. I want to see her too. There it was. Coffee. Lunch. That's how he framed it. But the speed of his answers told me he'd already rehearsed this. We never had closure, he said. It just ended. And now we've been together for 3 years. Things are good. You're great. You're safe. Safe. The word hit me harder than anything else he said. Safe is what you call a car with good airbags, not the woman you plan to spend your life with. I just need to know, he continued gaining momentum now. If there's still something there, I need to get it out of my system so I can fully commit to you. I stared at him, stunned by the audacity. So let me get this straight, I said quietly. You want to pause our relationship for a week so you can test whether your ex-girlfriend still excites you. And if she doesn't, you come back. Don't make it sound so ugly, he snapped. It's not a test. It's clarity. He reached for my hand. I pulled back. I need you to do this for me, he said softly. If you love me. There it was, the manipulation wrapped in romance. But I can't do it if you're here, he added. It would feel weird. Maybe you could stay with your sister or a hotel. Just give me the apartment until Sunday. He smiled then, almost hopeful. I'm 99% sure I'll choose you. 99%. He was asking me to vacate my own home where my name was on the lease, where I paid most of the rent, so he could play house with the woman who once shattered him. He wanted my absence to make his betrayal more comfortable. I looked at him, really looked. And in that moment, the love didn't fade. It burned away instantly, leaving behind something colder and clearer. If I argued, I'd look insecure. If I begged, I'd look weak. If I cried, I'd be emotional. He wanted me to compete. I decided I wouldn't. Okay, I said. He blinked. Okay. Yes, I repeated calmly. Okay. Relief spread across his face, gratitude, a hint of disappointment that I wasn't fighting harder. You're amazing, he said. Most women wouldn't understand. I stood up, scraped my untouched dinner into the trash, and walked toward the bedroom. He called after me, cheerful now. Just pack for a week. I didn't answer, because I wasn't packing for a week. I was packing my exit. I packed like someone evacuating before a storm, not frantic, not emotional, just precise. Daryl hovered in the doorway, at first pretending to be casual. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching me fold clothes into my suitcase as if this were some temporary inconvenience we were both enduring. In his mind, I was still his, still waiting, still orbiting his decision. Just the essentials, he said lightly. You'll be back Sunday night. I didn't look at him. Instead, I opened the small lockbox at the back of the closet. Inside were the things that actually mattered. My passport, my birth certificate, my social security card, the spare car key, the external hard drive with years of photos and work backups. I slid them into the mesh lining of the suitcase with deliberate care. Daryl's smile flickered. Why are you packing all that? He asked. In case, I said. I moved to the dresser next. I took my grandmother's necklace, the one thing I'd never let him borrow or joke about losing. My laptop, my noise-canceling headphones, my good shoes. I left behind the things that were easy to replace: the old sweaters, the worn-out jeans, the version of myself that thought compromise meant swallowing discomfort. He didn't stop me. That's the part that still matters. If he'd panicked, if he'd questioned it, if he'd even asked why, maybe there would have been doubt. But he didn't. He was too busy imagining his week without responsibility. "Lena lands in 2 hours," he said, almost giddy. "I'm thinking of picking her up." "You should," I replied, zipping the suitcase shut. Wouldn't want to keep her waiting. That wiped the smile off his face for just a second. I lifted the bag. It was heavier than I expected, not because of the weight, but because of what it represented. 3 years condensed into a single motion. At the front door, he reached for my arm. "Karen," he said softly, "thank you. I know this is weird, but when you come back, we're going to be stronger. I can feel it." He leaned in to kiss me. I turned my head slightly. His lips brushed my cheek instead. It felt cold, impersonal, like an obligation fulfilled. I took my key from my pocket and dropped it into his palm. "You can keep yours," he said, confused. "You'll need the spare." "In case Lena loses hers," I replied. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. I didn't slam it. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. The stairwell echoed with the steady thump of my suitcase as I descended 3 flights, each step lighter than the last. Outside, the evening air felt sharper, cleaner, like my lungs were finally getting oxygen again. I loaded the suitcase into my trunk and sat behind the wheel for a moment, hands resting on my thighs. Then I pulled out my phone. First, the banking app. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings, my contribution down to the last cent, into my personal account. Second, contacts. Daryl DeLeon. Blocked. Messages. Blocked. Social media. Blocked. I set the phone down. I wasn't going to my sister's. I wasn't going to a hotel. I checked into a small boutique place downtown instead. Neutral, quiet, anonymous. I ordered room service, ate alone, without distraction, and slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. It turns out anxiety needs hope to survive. By morning, I didn't have any. Wednesday, I went to work like nothing had happened. I managed projects for a logistics firm, moving resources, mitigating disasters, cutting losses when systems failed. By lunch, I realized I was treating my life the same way. First, call the landlord. I explained calmly that I was moving out effective immediately and would pay the penalty to remove my name from the lease. There was a pause on the line when he realized Daryl would have to qualify a loan. "That's between you and him," I said. "I just want my liability zero." I wired the money that afternoon. It hurt, but freedom always has a price. Thursday, I toured apartments. I used the savings account I'd labeled Future, the one meant for a ring, and renamed it Independence. I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom loft with exposed brick and 0 memories attached. That night, I lay on an air mattress in an empty apartment eating takeout from the box, staring at a ceiling that belonged only to me. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Daryl thought I was waiting. He had no idea I was already gone. Friday night arrived quietly, like the pause before something breaks. I hadn't spoken to Daryl in days. To him, my silence probably felt like obedience, like compliance, like I was somewhere counting hours, waiting for his verdict, holding my breath while he decided whether I was still worth choosing. The truth was simpler. I was assembling furniture in my new apartment, sleeves rolled up, music playing too loud. The windows open to the city. I bought a couch I liked without asking anyone's opinion. I stocked the fridge with food he used to complain about. I slept diagonally across the bed just because I could. I didn't miss him. Around 7:00 p.m., my phone buzzed, a name I hadn't blocked yet. Ethan, a mutual friend. Not close enough to know the truth, not distant enough to stay out of it. "Hey, random question. You and Daryl okay?" I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "Why?" The typing bubble appeared instantly. "I just saw him at Rowan's. He's with a woman in a leather jacket. Pretty sure it's Lena. They look intense. Didn't know if you guys were doing an open thing or..." My chest tightened, but it wasn't jealousy. It was disgust. Rowan's was where Daryl and I had our first date, where he'd told me I felt different, where he'd said I made him feel grounded. Of course he took her there. He was recycling memories because he didn't know how to create new ones. "We're done," I typed. "I moved out Tuesday." There was a pause. "Oh, damn. I'm sorry, Karen. For what it's worth, she looks desperate. He looks bored." I set the phone down. That was the moment it fully clicked. The fantasy was collapsing. In Daryl's head, Lena was this untouchable version of his past, mysterious, artistic, emotionally electric. the woman who represented who he could have been. But reality doesn't care about nostalgia. Reality shows up smelling like cigarettes and unmet expectations. Later that night, another message came in. Different friend. Similar tone. Daryl had been drinking. Lena had been on her phone. He was leaning too close. She wasn't leaning back. Someone mentioned she'd left early. Saturday passed in a blur. I bought a television. Real sheets. A decent coffee maker. My apartment slowly stopped echoing. Meanwhile, his life was getting louder. By Sunday morning, I could almost map out his emotional trajectory without being there. The initial thrill, the awkward silences, the realization that the spark he missed was actually anxiety, the slow dread settling in as he sensed her pulling away. He thought this week would give him clarity. It did, just not the kind he expected. I went for a run that morning. Came back sweaty, alive, grounded. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. Marking time not by waiting, but by moving forward. At 11 a.m., his ex-girlfriend's flight was scheduled. I imagined the car ride to the airport, the forced conversation, the unspoken question hanging in the air. What does this mean for us? I already knew the answer. At 1:14 p.m., my phone lit up. Daryl calling. I let it ring twice before answering. I didn't say hello. I just breathed. Karen, he said, voice rushed, almost shaky. Hey, are you there? I'm here, I replied calmly. Relief flooded his voice. Thank God. This week was a nightmare. I leaned back against my couch. Was it, I asked? Yes, he said quickly. You were right. Lena isn't who I thought she was. She's immature, selfish. I spent the whole time wishing it was you. He paused, waiting for comfort, for validation, for me to reclaim my role. I choose you, he said softly. I choose us. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because the timing was perfect. I choose you. Daryl said it like it was a gift. Like those 3 words erased everything that came before them. Like I should feel honored that after weighing his options, he'd decided I was still the better investment. I let the silence stretch. On my end of the call, sunlight poured through the windows of my new apartment, catching the edges of furniture I'd chosen myself. There were no shared photos on the walls. No compromises humming quietly in the background. Just space. Just peace. Karen, he prompted. Are you still there? I'm here, I said again. His voice softened, slipping into that familiar register, the one he used when he wanted something. Come home. I'll make dinner. That pasta you like. Let's forget this ever happened. Home. The word landed wrong. I can't do that, I said. What his confusion came fast, brittle. Why not? You're at your sister's, right. Just drive back. I'm not at my sister's. A pause. I'm not at a hotel either. The pause thickened. Where are you? He asked. At home, I said. Another silence, heavier this time. That doesn't make sense, he said slowly. I'm at home. You're not here. You're at your apartment, I corrected gently. I'm at mine. The breath hitched on the other end of the line. I could almost see the realization inching toward him, his mind scrambling to reject it. What are you talking about, Karen? His voice rose. This was just a week. We agreed. You asked me to leave so you could sleep with your ex-girlfriend, I said evenly. You called it a pause. I called it a breakup. No, he snapped. You said okay. I said okay to leaving, I replied. I didn't say I was coming back. You can't just decide that. His voice cracked. We live together. The rent my life. The rent is paid for this month, I said. I paid the penalty to remove my name from the lease. Starting next month, it's entirely yours. Silence. Then panic. You went behind my back, he said, disbelief bleeding into anger. You didn't even talk to me. You didn't talk to me when you asked me to disappear for a week, I said. You informed me. His breathing grew uneven. Lena is gone, he said desperately. She left this morning. She didn't even say goodbye properly. I have no one. The words tumbled out now. The mask was gone. You're not alone, I said calmly. You made a choice. No, he pleaded. I made a mistake. Those are the same thing, I replied. There it was, the breaking point. You can't do this to me, he said, voice cracking. Please. I love you. I closed my eyes. Not because it hurt, but because it was finally clear. You love the version of me that waited, I said. I don't exist anymore. Karen, don't hang up. We're not pretending anymore, I said quietly. You wanted to see if there was something still there. I paused. There isn't. I ended the call. Then I blocked his number. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle into the room like a soft blanket. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I stood, walked to the fridge, and poured myself a glass of wine. Just as I took the first sip, the doorbell rang. I frowned, startled. When I opened the door, it wasn't Daryl. It was a delivery driver holding a pizza box. Right, I'd ordered that. Have a good night, he said with a smile. I smiled back. I will. Because even though the call was over, the consequences were just beginning. The silence after I blocked Daryl didn't last long. It never does. 2 days later, Tuesday morning, I was at my desk reviewing timelines when my phone buzzed. With a notification, I couldn't avoid a screenshot sent by a coworker who didn't know the story, but knew something was wrong. It was a social media post. Daryl's. A long wall of text carefully crafted, emotionally charged, and painfully familiar. Some people run at the first sign of discomfort. A real partner fights through confusion. Abandoning someone when they're vulnerable is the deepest betrayal. I deserved honesty. I deserved loyalty. Instead, I was left. Hashtag heartbroken. Hashtag truth. Hash fake love. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly. Just enough to feel the absurdity of it settle in my chest. This was his final move, rewrite the story so he could be the victim and I could be the coward who walked away. He left out the part where he asked me to vacate my home so he could audition another woman. He left out the part where he framed betrayal as clarity. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. People who know you don't need explanations. By Wednesday, the cracks started showing. I received an automated email from the utility company payment failed. Insufficient funds. I smiled. When I moved out, I'd quietly removed my card from the account and left only his. He hadn't noticed. He hadn't planned. He'd assumed stability would simply continue to exist for him. That afternoon, the messages started coming from numbers I didn't recognize. Karen, this is cruel. At least talk to him. He's a mess. You didn't have to leave him like this. Be the bigger person. I replied to one. It was from Rachel, his closest friend, the one who always told him to follow his heart, even when his heart led straight into chaos. He asked me to move out for a week so he could sleep with his ex-girlfriend. I made the move permanent. If you think he's a victim, you're welcome to help with his rent. I never heard back. By Friday, the narrative had shifted. Quietly, privately, the way truth usually does. People stopped reaching out. The posts slowed. The sympathy dried up. Daryl, however, was unraveling. I didn't see it directly. I didn't need to. The emails started arriving at my work address, the one channel he still had access to. Subject, please read this. I deleted it. Subject, I didn't cheat. Deleted. Subject, rent. That one lingered just long enough for me to read the first line. I can't afford the apartment alone. The landlord says I have to reapply or get a roommate. We were partners. Doesn't that mean anything? I forwarded it to spam. Because partnership doesn't include being put on hold while someone else is tested. Friday night, I went out for drinks with coworkers to celebrate closing a project. I felt lighter than I had in years. 3 drinks in, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And somewhere across the city, Daryl was realizing that the safety he dismissed wasn't something he could summon back with regret. I didn't plan to see her story from the inside. Life just handed it to me unfiltered. It was Friday night, a week after the breakup. I was at a bar near my office with coworkers. Nothing dramatic, just the quiet kind of celebration that comes after surviving a hard deadline. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't emotional. I was just present. Then I saw Lena. She was standing at the bar, leather jacket, scuffed at the sleeves, hair slightly greasy, scanning the room like she was waiting for someone who never showed. She looked older than the version Daryl carried in his head. Tired in a way nostalgia doesn't capture. I didn't recognize her from photos. I recognized her from his stories. I took the empty seat beside her without thinking, motioned for another drink. She glanced at me, then back at her glass. Tough week, I asked casually. She laughed humorless. You have no idea. I didn't tell her who I was. I didn't need to. She knocked back her shot and sighed. Came to visit an old flame. Thought it might be fun. Closure, you know. I nodded. Guy turned out to be a mess, she continued. Emotionally needy. Talking about the future on day 2. Crying because I didn't want to watch some stupid movie with him. I kept my face neutral. He kicked his girlfriend out to have me over, she added, rolling her eyes. I told him if he could do that to her, he'd do it to anyone. No loyalty, no backbone. There it was. Confirmation without malice, without intent. I raised my glass. Sounds like you dodged something. She snorted. I dodged a whole disaster. Left early. Crashed on a friend's couch. Flying out tomorrow. I paid my tab and stood. Safe flight, I said. She smiled politely, unaware she'd just delivered the final truth I didn't know I needed. I walked out of that bar feeling weightless. Daryl hadn't lost me because of Lena. He lost me because he was willing to trade loyalty for curiosity. And even the woman he risked everything for saw it. By the time I got home, my phone was quiet again. No emails, no messages, just peace. There was only one chapter left. Stop! Type continue when you're ready for part 7, the final encounter. Part 7, the final encounter. I didn't think there would be an ending scene. Life usually doesn't bother with neat conclusions. It just drifts forward, leaving you to decide what mattered and what didn't. By the time 2 weeks had passed, Daryl had gone quiet. No emails, no messages from friends, no public declarations of heartbreak. Just absence. I assumed that was it. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, life handed me something extra. I was at a coffee shop near my new apartment, the good one with too much glass and not enough outlets. I was sitting across from Thomas Reed, a man I'd met a week earlier through mutual friends. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks. It was easy. He listened. He didn't flinch when I spoke. His calm didn't feel like safe in the dismissive way Daryl had used the word. It felt like stability without entitlement. We were laughing about something small when the door chimed. I looked up. Daryl walked in. He looked diminished. No fresh haircut, no confidence in his posture. His jacket hung off him like it belonged to someone else. Dark circles carved shadows beneath his eyes. He was holding a stack of papers, flyers. I didn't need to read them to know what they were. Roommate wanted. He hadn't seen me yet. He walked to the community board near the counter, pinned one up, then turned. Our eyes met. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. I saw it all happen in real time, the hope, the disbelief, the silent calculation. He saw me, the calm, the clean lines of a life that had moved on without him. He saw Thomas leaning back comfortably, his arm resting on the chair beside mine. He saw what he'd assumed would still be waiting. Karen, he croaked. Thomas glanced at me. Friend of yours. I looked at Daryl. I saw the man who once asked me to leave my own home so he could chase a memory. I saw the entitlement, the panic, the realization that his safety net had walked away. I turned back to Thomas. No, I said calmly. I don't know him. Daryl's mouth opened, closed. He took a step toward us, then stopped. Behind me there was a sharp intake of breath, the sound of paper crumpling. Then the door chimed again. When I looked back a minute later, he was gone. The flyer lay on the floor, already scuffed by passing feet. That was the last time I ever saw him. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that he'd defaulted on the lease, moved back in with his parents, that Lena had blocked him completely, that his version of the story had finally run out of listeners. Me. I got promoted. I traveled. I kept seeing Thomas. I never got the apology Daryl probably rehearsed in his head. And I realized I didn't need it. Closure is a myth people use to stay connected to the thing that hurt them. The real ending happens when you stop waiting for permission to leave. He wanted to see if there was still